AI-generated artwork is in its infancy, and yet it's easy to see how this new medium is going to completely transform the lives of creative professionals as well as photographers. In this episode, we're going to do a podcast-style discussion around it.
My name is Pi, and I'm one of the founders of Lynn and Jersa Photography and SLRLounge.com. We're teaming up with Adorama to bring you a new series of photography tutorials called Master Your Craft right here on Adorama TV. So let's dive in.
What's up, friends? My name is Pi. Welcome to Adorama TV. I want to do a quick introduction because this is a bit of a different video. We're going to drop into a podcast-style discussion with my good friend Pratik Naik. For those of you that know Pratik, you probably know that he doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Pratik is an incredible photographer, professional retoucher, and educator. Yes, a lot of people know who he is, and he's also the developer behind Infinite Tools. It's pretty much the best retouching toolkit you can get if you're into professional retouch. We'll link up all of his info and all that stuff in the description, but in the meanwhile, we're going to drop into a conversation that he and I had around the subject of AI-generated artwork. See, Pratik and I have been getting really into AI-generated art through different pieces of software. We're going to be talking about Midjourney. We'll talk about the entire field, but what we're noticing is how AI-generated artwork, despite being in this early infancy, this beta, is going to completely transform the creative professional's approach to creating anything, illustrations, artwork, as well as the photographer's approach to creating imagery. So we're going to talk about all those implications and where we think this is going. Let's get straight to the conversation. Why don't we start with just talking about what is AI-generated artwork? Maybe we can show some pieces that you and I have created. I'm going to let you start with this one.
All right, very exciting. So just to introduce this, as if we swear we don't have any stake in this at all. This is just something that we are very passionate about. But let's just say that you're interested in creating art. Perhaps you don't know where to get started or how to draw or even paint, or you don't even know a lot of artists, but you have these imaginations or these ideas and you've always wanted to see realized. And well, a lot of us, kind of jump into the creative field because of that reason. Well, now with artificial intelligence, you can actually type out, and we call them prompts, exactly what you're thinking about. And once you're done typing that sentence, let's just put it in layman's terms at the moment, but once you're done typing that sentence and hit enter, the AI will interpret the words that you're saying and create a lot of variety of art based on your imagination. And that's kind of what AI art is. Currently, we're using a program called Midjourney, but there's a couple of ones out there at the moment and probably more in the future. And it has its own social media kind of platform on Discord. And we use that to generate these pieces. So the images that you're about to see are not real. We didn't physically make them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I consider myself at least more of a director rather than artist in this relationship.
Yeah, it becomes like a director / curator, basically. It would probably help to even describe exactly what we're doing, because it's hard to, you see these imagery that we're creating. And to be completely transparent, I received this invite to Midjourney when they were in closed beta. I think they were giving it to a bunch of different creatives that had platforms. And I kind of ignored it until I actually saw you and a couple other people putting out these images maybe a few weeks ago. And I'm like, okay, I need to actually get myself registered and check this thing out. Because what you actually are doing is you're literally typing. So the prompt that Pratik is talking about, you'd say / imagine, and then a sentence. It could be anything. You could say, imagine, one of my images is, show me the mysteries of the universe while standing on the planet Vormir from Avengers. And then literally it paints a person standing on Vormir, and then it puts, it does its own thing and kind of coming up with this image. And it's hard to imagine, because when you first start publishing these images and you say like, I just told an AI to create this, people are like, what are you talking about? I don't get it.
Yeah, I want to show you some of the images that I first felt made me fall in love with AI in general. The image that we're pulling up now is one that I always wanted to imagine. And that's a portrait of a Indian woman in India with traditional wear. And flowers, because in our tradition, flowers are pretty important for a variety of reasons. And I couldn't believe, and I'll just keep going through multiple images, but, B, A and B, is that you have color composition, you have execution of ideas in a way that's so abstract that doesn't register to me. Because you'd think, a machine or whatever this mystical AI is trying to interpret, our words. This one over here is about if Da Vinci went in the past, or we went into the past and saw Da Vinci's blueprints of the universe, what would that look like? And him being such a versatile artist, he would probably have done something like that. And I have these random ideas that I always come up with, and I've never really figured out how to materialize it. And because of this, like this one, for example, this image in front of me is about how aliens, if we made first contact with them, and if they wanted to make a warm welcome, what would they do? And I imagined them having this alien fashion show so that they could be relatable to humans as a first point of contact. So I was like, let's make an alien fashion show. And it does it in realistic styles, photorealistic styles. You can add film grain, you can different focal lengths, all of that.
You literally describe, and one of the things that you mentioned is like taking the style of another artist. So like you mentioned, you can say, provide me an illustration or a photograph or whatever it is with someone else's style. One of my favorites so far is, one of my favorite artists is MC Escher, right? So I grew up, my father's an engineer, so I think he was very drawn to it and gave me, my first fine art book was an MC Escher book. And so I wrote into the prompt, imagine if MC Escher created an illustration that depicted hell and it created this. And you're like, okay, this is absolutely wild. Another one, everybody probably knows Hokusai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but you've most certainly seen the waves image, this fine art painting of these waves that has been used everywhere, right? This classic painting. And I said, imagine if Hokusai had painted like the mountains of China, specifically the Ermei Mountains. And it puts this out. And I'm like, this is absolutely wild. Like the accuracy that it can create. And mind you that what Pratik and I are showing you right now, this is the beta version of the first generation software that is doing this. So let your head kind of, think on that for a second. Like, where is this potentially going to go?
Pi, I just today of this recording saw that Heinz came up with their first campaign using all AI generated Heinz bottles. So it's already starting to take effect in our industry in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because we talked earlier about like how this is kind of becoming the creative fidget spinner, right? Like we're spending hours just having fun, bringing these imaginative ideas to life. And that's kind of the first reaction that I had was, this is incredible. Like anything I can imagine, I can now bring to some sort of visual where at least I have a starting point. At least I have a place to go from there. And then I started getting really scared, like terrified, because
me too.
Right? Because it's so good that you can, if you know the way technology is kind of going, you can immediately start to get implications of where this is going to go very quickly. And I want to get into this whole part of this. So now we kind of know like what is AI generated artwork, this initial feeling of like an excitement and then that kind of like terror that follows. I want to talk about maybe what were some of your first thoughts in terms of like applications of this from a practical standpoint. So not getting into implications yet, but like, what were the first things that you started thinking about doing with it?
I already started doing something with it. So for instance, me and my wife, Bella Kotek, she's a fine art photographer and the true star. She should actually be the one sitting here today. But I love what she does with her work, and her work is fantasy fairy tale based. And as you can already start imagining, think of Disney posters, think of fairy tales, and there are a lot of elements that go into these shoots, whether it's wings, whether it's necklaces, whether it's jewelry, fashion. And when Bella started seeing me playing with it, she was like, can it make X? And can it make Y? And I said, let's try it out. Let's see what happens. So we started entering words in, and this was a version of Midjourney that's not even what we have today. And it started creating these beautiful like golden wings and stuff that we could start compositing into photographs. What it did for us, it saved us production time. It saved us time to find other assets, make other assets, wait for shipping, all that kind of stuff. And obviously we can't use it for everything yet, but we could start compositing photographic elements. Perhaps you're shooting a model in studio and you have a really hard time trying to get a location. Well, now you can effectively say, here's a photograph of a particular location, generate something similar. So it's not only words, you can use actual photographs and it will read it and come up with something similar and create variations till it's exactly what you're going for.
Yeah, it's a wild notion. And one of the crazy pieces of that is, we'll talk more about this in a minute when we get to the implications of it, but you can provide it with an image, and we're not far from simply providing a source image and then telling the computer what to do with that image. Well, I want to get to that in just a minute. One of the first practical uses that I saw was kind of similar. In we started up a platform for kind of psychology and relationship development, right? And so I thought, how cool would it be to be able to actually illustrate? Because I fancy myself, a creative, a photographer, that is my medium. I can think of things better and I can describe them better in words than I could by hand. Like, I'm not a good artist when it comes to like drawing something by pencil or painting. In fact, my high school art teacher, I always say this, my high school art teacher told me to quit. He was like, you're not good at this. And then I became a professional photographer. But the first thought was like, now I can actually bring these things to life. So in that psychology field, it's like, what if we can create illustrations of these psychological concepts? One of them came from a quote by Penny Reed. She said, don't light yourself on fire trying to keep other people warm, meaning like, don't sacrifice your own self, your own needs, and just to help others consistently, because it's kind of a one-way street to a breakdown, right?
Yeah.
So I told the AI, I go, imagine, what would it look like lighting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm? And then it came back with this. And I was like, okay, I literally couldn't do better if I tried myself. Like I could take what it gives me and I could go into Photoshop and I could make it more.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do better. And then I thought, well, now I can illustrate each of these concepts. And then the next thought was, well, holy crap, if I can do this on my own, why would I ever hire an illustrator?
Right. Absolutely. And Pi, not to interrupt you, but you said something that made me wonder about a question that I got from somebody when I started posting these images. They said, if you're a child now growing up with this technology, and you as a child have this grand imagination, and instantly you get this gratification of what your vision looks like just by understanding how to type and communicate, that although that strengthens a lot of different pathways in your brain when it comes to communication, does it weaken this mystery of wanting to explore art as a physical medium? And because you said that yourself, you said, well, I couldn't do any better, so I'm going to, go down and use this image. But does it stop people coming up now from exploring their artistic possibilities?
Yeah, I think this is a perfect transition into the implications of this, right? So this beautifully terrifying kind of, technology that we have, and the implications are both positive and negative. And that was one of the first ones that I thought about as well, because I have 4 kids. And the first thing that I thought is, why would you ever spend the time, the years to learn how to draw, to learn how to paint, to learn any of these things, if all you need to do is spend a couple hours learning how to prompt an AI?
Yeah.
And I have to think that, just based on the fact that we are so driven for results, like across the board, it's always time saving, results, getting somewhere faster, that yes, this is going to have a dramatic impact of the desire to like learn things traditionally. I think that's going to become the very first casualty of this, is going to be this loss of desire to learn something traditionally.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but for me, I remember when I started thinking about that seriously, I was conflicted because I already started seeing that a lot of my own personal interests were being affected, and the draw that like photography had on me compared to the time I was getting and the gratification I was getting with coming up with art in this manner. And what I realized was something interesting, is that for some reason, doing this made me actually want to go back and shoot even more. It actually made me realize and appreciate how much I miss the other aspects of photography. Because photography isn't just the end result, it's also the gratification, the process of getting to that final photo. And that's something that this doesn't actually give you. And I started then using AI art as a mood board generator. And then I started to shoot more with the concepts that I could possibly use. So it started becoming another tool in my tool set. And I don't think it's going to replace art as a curiosity and as a growing point, as a creative. How did you feel over time once you started playing with this, and did it impact your other creative desires too?
Yeah, so it was very quick. I'm talking like within a week, I could immediately notice that every form of imagery was less meaningful to me.
Yeah.
When I saw, all these that new James Webb Telescope photographs that are on the internet, right?
Amazing.
I saw some of those pop up, and first thing I thought was, "Oh, this is incredible." The first thing I thought was, "Is this AI generated or is this real?" And I thought, that's strange. Like, now the first thing that I question is like, is this actually real or not? And why should that matter, right? If it's something nice to look at, why does that matter? But no, it does. And I noticed that what was impressive to me became less impressive.
Yeah.
And my need for like visual stimulation that was even more grand, it was almost like an addiction that revved up so quickly that it's kind of wild. The psychology side of it was like, at first, AI generated art was incredible. No matter what this thing spat out, it was incredible. Now you have to show me something that's kind of wild and out there to get a response from me. And I'm only like a week into this, like 2 weeks into this, right? And so every time I see a photograph, every time I see something else, we already have this tendency with social media, with everything, to kind of just keep swiping, right? You see something incredible. You see something that an artist spent days, maybe even years developing, and it gets a 5-second glimpse maybe on your Instagram feed while you're swiping. Maybe you give it a like, but someone actually spent a substantial amount of time getting to that place. But now that was even more exaggerated. Like, I needed more. I need more stimulation. And so I feel like one of the other negative impacts of this is going to be the standard of every visual medium gets raised, because when this is so accessible, when it's so, like this is the democratization of creative capacity to a level that I would never have thought possible.
At least not yet.
No. And so when everyone can do this, what is the expectation of the actual professional?
Yep. I think now it becomes not so much the style in which you create or the time it takes to create, but the ideas in which you generate your creations from. So I think you're going to start seeing a shift into appreciating people's visions more so than the technical execution. And I'm already starting to see that the images, whether physical or AI generated, the ones that get the most attention, now in a kind of level playing field, it starts bringing people's imagination to the forefront, and we can see a closer glimpse of who we are as artists in our mind, and not hindered per se by the level of ability. And I'm starting to explore my own imagination more. Like, I'm starting to look around me and wonder of life even more and appreciate life, because now that I have these sentences that can generate these things, I look around thinking, wow, the stars are beautiful. What if they're made of cotton candy? What would that look like? And I'm starting to feel, I would say, like the mechanical pathways that, your brain is kind of composed of start strengthening in the imagination spectrum. I feel like more of a kid again, like when you're a kid and you start thinking of these wild things. So yeah, like, what about you? Have you noticed a shift in how you're perceiving the world around you because of it as well?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you that to one extent, a positive result has been the way that you put it is very positive. And I do agree that like, it's kind of, it takes you out of the box, right? Like, now you start seeing what people are creating, what they're combining. You start thinking very differently in ways that you would have never even explored before, because just exploring some of these ideas, one of my, we talked about some of the deep psychological and all these creative artwork. Well, we all have the immature ones that we do too. And one of my immature ones was like, what if Yoda was a professional basketball player? I wouldn't even explore that ever if it weren't for this medium, because I don't have that time that I could dedicate to exploring that idea, if that makes sense. There's too many other things, but in this form, I could explore that. I could explore anything. And if I can explore anything, then yes, those creative pathways get opened up. But at the same time, my counterpoint to that is like, if now imagination has no limits, what level of imagination do you need to see to actually be stimulated by it? Like when we went and saw, the Avengers movies and these crazy different worlds that Marvel brought to life and all that, there's this fantastical element of like, this is just so wild that someone could imagine this.
Yes.
But with this tool, everyone's going to have that ability, and they're going to train that muscle. And when they've trained that muscle, what happens to the expectation of like everything? I started wondering, like, is Avengers and all these fantastic graphic novels and everything that we might have, are all those less meaningful because we will have seen things like that everywhere?
And do you know the term temple fatigue?
No.
So temple fatigue is when, imagine you're going overseas and in a place where there's a lot of temples. And basically, like when you start seeing one after the other, no matter how beautiful they all are respectively, at the end of it, you're just drained. It's like when you go to a museum, right? And you spend a few hours, and at the end of it, no matter how beautiful, it could be a Picasso at the end of it, and you're just like, I'm done. I'm spent. I feel like you're right. We're going to get to that point. And your point about CG is really interesting. Did you ever go to the Marvel movies in the beginning when we first saw how much effort, and we saw the behind the scenes from the visual production side of how much time they spent? Now we just take it for granted, Oh,
for sure. For sure. Now we expect the television shows to be as good as the movies. Like, and then, and the other crazy part is you can literally see the psychology of it if you just look at the Marvel timeline. One after another, every movie had to be bigger than the last. Every single production, every single possibility had to be bigger than the last. And there's a certain point where bigger and more wild is not necessarily better, but that's the expectation that it creates.
Yes. And maybe that's why AI kind of came at a good point right now, just because in the sense where if people are looking for continuously efficient workflows, maybe, these long tasks will be expedited in the future from that. Granted, I don't know what that's going to look like for creative industry, for jobs. Do you see a shift in different job positions opening up? And how do you think that's going to look like?
So that's the next big impact that I see that this is going to have. And I firmly believe, just from this beta glimpse of this, that basically the top 1% of every creative field, they're going to be safe. They've always been safe because they're creating something so unique, so tailored, that it would be difficult for an AI to ever like replicate, right? The top 1%, and I'm talking like storyboard artists, like for movies, VFX designers. I'm talking photographers, commercial photographers, as well as like portrait photographers, as well as I'm talking like literally every single, like a children's art book. Like if you wanted to have someone illustrate a book, right? Every one of these creative endeavors, I think, are going to be whittled down to the 1% that can do it to a level that is so far beyond. They'll make it professionally and they'll stay and they'll keep their jobs. But the 99%, and these numbers are just numbers, right? They don't mean anything. But the vast majority, the 99% who are good at what they do, they're good at their craft, but they're not at that level of like greatness. They're going to be let go. They're going to be replaced with an AI that could do this, like as the storyboard, as the writer myself. Unless I'm getting the best storyboard artist in the world to come and do this, I might as well just create it myself to my own vision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like as a dress designer, you've got these dresses on your Instagram, like the ones that you put together.
Yeah.
Like if you're a dress designer, do you really now need to hire an artist, or do you just put your vision down? And what we have is so primitive compared to where this is going to be in even a year from now.
Yeah.
So like someone might say, well, yeah, there's limitations on the way that it looks right now, or you can start to see that it has a specific style, and maybe the source images, you can start to see that coming out, that everything looks similar.
Yeah.
This is a beta software.
Oh, hi. And I have to say, I'm not 100% sure on these numbers, but I was listening to on Midjourney on Discord, which is where you use Midjourney.
Yeah.
The guy who is the creator owner goes weekly, I think on Wednesdays or Thursdays, and talks about some of the behind the scenes stuff. And you can ask them questions. And one thing that I think was mentioned is that even now, the results that you're getting now is based on a very limited data set, because it has to compress the internet's worth of information in a very small data set. Imagine if you have like a raw file and you have like a super compressed JPEG. That's kind of the compression they go through to compress it all. And the images we're getting now is based on that. So imagine if you had a server, your own server, running and referencing everything. Then, wild. Yeah. And also the second thing that I heard, which was interesting, was that AI every single day advances like a multitude of years of human growth in a day. So everything that we think is impossible is just based on ego. That's what I, kind of think.
That's why I'm saying 1 year from now, not 5. Because like in 1 year, we've seen just updates that within like one update, all of a sudden you get realistic faces. You're like, what just happened? And then, so the way that it's going to progress is going to be at a pace that's insane. And so that's what I'm saying is like the 99%, the vast majority of people that are in a creative field that is anything art related, illustration related, I fear for those jobs, those positions. Like we said, the desire to even learn that craft, all of that is kind of wild. Now on the flip side, if you're the writer, and this is kind of cool, because on the flip side, I do have concepts. Like I'm creating psychological concepts for human development and for all these different things. And now I don't need to, I can do it all myself, right? And that's really cool. That's empowering. But this goes back to one of the things that you mentioned earlier, like how do you feel when you use this? And you use the word director. And I said I would agree, director or curator. And that's where I feel like the skill set, the value that an artist or the creative is going to bring to the table in the future is in directing and curating a vision. Like it's going to be, if I'm going to subscribe to your feed, it's not just about what you can create, but that you serve me things that I will continually like.
Yeah. Inspire.
Yeah. So it shifts that dynamic dramatically. But yeah, I kind of have this deep fear of that area of like, just, it's going to wipe out a lot. And granted, those people are going to have to figure out like, what are the ways to create value? Now, this is a photography platform, and I'm going to spell out how quickly this is going to come to photography. Not only psychologically, I already feel like when I look at a photograph, I feel less impressed by it just because of what I can create and what I can do on my own, right? But outside of that, you can already feed Midjourney a source image and give it guidance on top of that. How many years, months do you think we are away from taking a photograph of a model in your studio? And you don't have to do set design. You don't have to do costume design. You don't have to do anything else. All you do is you tell Midjourney or whatever AI, just take this subject, paste them onto this planet, add these wings, do this. You literally illustrate with words, and there's your photograph. The art of compositing, the art of like the need for Photoshop even.
Hey, hold on there.
I know. But like how many years? How many years do you think that's away?
I honestly, one.
Yeah.
One. And not only that, but even in the 3D space, what's going to happen when you take whatever creation that you have and either 3D print the dress, because it's going to come with its own, mesh, or even animate, because these nuances of angle or movement in time is, again, just another element that it has to learn, so that also brings me to the question, do you think that a specialized skill set will be from humans like photography or actually physically drawing or painting is going to be more valuable in the future? Because if everyone's running to AI to create, it becomes the lowest common denominator kind of platform.
Yes.
And then when you have people who can still do photography in the traditional way and excel at it, does that become more valuable? Because people will always want to kind of seek that is, less frequent.
I do believe that there is going to be like a purist movement that comes from this. Kind of like when everyone went digital, film all of a sudden got revived a few years later and was like, film isn't dead. Like we still love this. And you do have You have clients, you have artists, you have people that are purists that want that experience, right, of analog. So I do think there's going to be this pushback and this kind of counterculture, but I think those countercultures are always going to be the like minority of something. It's going to be like the 10%, the 20%. We have a visitor. My daughter has just popped in.
Hi.
I am literally recording something live right now. You're going to say hi?
Hi. She's...
Hi? Say hi. There's a camera. Hi. Hi. Hey, tell Pratik, how do you say fart?
Fuck.
That's right. That's right. I feel like there will be a purist movement, but I think that's always going to represent, I don't know, in compared to digital to film, what is it, like 90% to 10%?
Yeah, it's definitely outnumbered.
So the vast majority are going to be, using the latest and greatest tools, and there will be a purist movement. But I think that what's going to happen is that it's going to shift the value that a creative person is going to bring to the table. Like when digital came about, the value of being able to properly expose something, to be able to get it right on film, that value that a professional brought went away, right? Because now, who cares if the exposure is not right? It's not like you have a limited amount of film. If you can tweak, you can adjust, you can get things right in camera. Yeah. The expectation now shifts over to like creative ability as well as client interaction. Now with this next step, I feel like again you take away that technical. Now creative ability is no longer a factor. Everybody has that, and the next step is just simply what's left is client interaction. Like, what value do you bring to understanding what someone appreciates, what they value, what they have in mind, and bringing that thing to life? That's going to be, in my opinion, the last remaining product. And I think that product will always, well, at least for a good time, it'll be safe.
Yeah. Until AI starts directing its own AI. Then it's a bit of a problem.
Dude, that's going to be wild. Like, what if it got to a point where AI could understand your values, your vision, everything, and bring it to life, and they're not going to fight with you. They're not going to have an argument. They're not going to create they don't make it, it's just so much easier to interact with them because I don't have to worry about if they like me or not or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. And also the interesting thing is, even now, if you're looking for a script or a copyright or an essay written, you can do that just by typing in general briefs and having it write for you. So what's to say that this thing that's writing the brief can't already connect to the thing that's going to create vision, based off of that brief? So it's very interesting to see where this is all going. And it's very hard to keep up with, How do you keep up with stuff like this? Is it just, again, interest and passion?
So far, at least for right now, this is enjoyable. Like it is meditative, right? To kind of sit down and just create things.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know. Like I feel like these things are happening at such a pace that I already have some ways to kind of incorporate this into our education and things that we're doing. But beyond that, I don't know. Like I noticed that you created a new Instagram actually for your futurist.ai for all of Pratik's artwork, and it's exploding. It's going fast. But then my first question is, but where do you go after that? Like, it doesn't feel like these are going to be necessarily valuable as NFTs or even as paintings because anyone can do it for themselves.
Right.
So where do you go from there? Like what is it that you transition into?
For now, I'm keeping a very open mind because I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that it's going to be relevant enough to establish your AI profile right now, if that makes sense. Because I agree with you. We're going to have a shift into the things that make us hireable or interesting, and the creative paths that we will start using in order to execute those ideas to clients or, to pretty much anyone in the future. So I don't know where it's going to go, but I do know that it was an important time to stay on top of it and, set up some profiles because I knew that as AI progresses, even though we don't know where it's going to go, we do need to stay on top of the education aspect, even though we don't have a lot of time, because then we can start using these tools to start making money in other ways or to start incorporating into our photography, or also just to know where the future of art is headed. Because I kind of don't want to be in a position where tomorrow I wake up and there's something that replaces my job and it was in development for 2 months and I just heard about it. If I could see it coming and stay on top of it, I could then pivot and be creative in what I'm going to do kind of going forward. So I think that's the common bond that holds us together, is the fact that we are creatives and we are able to stay ahead of what's going to happen but in creative ways. And Pi, I'm sure you've seen, but AI is also taking place in other industries too, and it's changing how science, technology, all of it is evolving. You know,
we use it for writing as well.
Do you really?
There's AI writing applications that will actually help you generate AI-based script that sounds, again, it already replaces like 60, the average copywriter. There's no need anymore.
Oh my gosh. So we're all going through it together in many ways.
Every industry is going to face it. I mean, the same thing's going to happen in, let's say, for example, the music industry. Right now, what holds someone back from creating the music that they can think of is, because I used to produce music, right? Is the tools, understanding the different pieces of software, having the hardware, being able to blend, being able to master. Mastering is a skill in and of itself that takes years to develop. Like, how do you master a track? But holy crap, you could teach an AI how to master a track. And once it knows how to do it, like you just, instead of learning it for 10 years, people get paid thousands of dollars an hour just to go into a studio and master a song that's already recorded. Like, that's a major.
Now I went into the wrong field.
Yeah, these are all major areas. And when I can go in and say, okay, give me a synthetic beat coming off of this specific keyboard at 120 beats per minute on a 3/4 rhythm, like I can literally describe it, and it could just sit there and spit it out to me like this music. And again, what happens to me is that we have to start understanding that the value of what we're creating is going to shift again. Any person that is a photographer and is basing that career off of their ability to, like, well, I have a vision for something and nobody else can achieve that vision. That part of your job is no longer going to be valuable because other people can achieve that vision. And again, to me, what remains in every industry is the human component. That's why, like, for our wedding photography business, so much of the business is built around human psychology and the human element, because digital made it possible for so many people to create technically beautiful images. So we had to be offering something different. And the only thing that's always held up is that human component. And I think that we're safe on that side for maybe 20 years. At least I'll be retired and done. My kids will have to deal with this.
Stay tuned for the next episode when we talk about robots.
But that's what I see remaining, is like as if you are a dress designer, it's not going to be about the tools that you use. It's going to be about working with the artist that is, coming up with these. It's going to be how you bring those things to life and how you interact with the people around you. And if you're a musician, it's the same thing. It's your ability to curate, your ability to work and bring value as from the human element.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's really hard to tell. And I do at least believe in the fact that, as professionals, we do have a good understanding of how to interact with other people. So, if we kind of stick to who we are, it should hopefully go well.
Yeah, I think if you're a service-based creative, I do feel like you're safe. Like if what you do is understand what someone values and you help them to bring that vision to life and you create something for them, and like you're solving a core need that they have from start to finish, then you're safe. But if it's based around technical ability, that goes away. That like literally eliminated. Everybody will have technical ability.
So you're saying you start being a better person and start knowing how to interact with people that can have more direct value and come up with something that is more service-based.
Absolutely. And I think that element becomes that much more valuable the direction we're going, right? Because even from as we interview and take data and study the younger generation, they're already having a difficult time communicating with others. Like the anxiety, the ability to communicate in public settings, that is a diminishing skill. So when it's diminishing, it becomes that much more valuable. So if you are that, imagine, 5-10 years from now, when the majority of creatives and people just have interacted only with computers, the ability to actually communicate face-to-face with somebody becomes that much more valuable. I only see our ability to communicate going downhill. I don't think it's ever going to, unless we have Neuralink and everybody gets Elon Musk's brain chip and now we can just go think a thought and you get it.
Yeah. Though, on the counterpoint, since we have AI, even right now, you're seeing it where your ability to communicate determines whether you can actually make concepts reality or not. So in that respect, I think communication will strengthen, but I think you're right. The more we go away from actual human to human interaction, the worse it's going to get.
Well, and like, how is speaking to an AI necessarily going to help me talk with you? Am I going to be like, Pratik, imagine this, Unreal Engine, 8K, soft lighting, soft color, and, give me a hyper realistic render.
That is going to change too. You're going to talk just like Pi talks, and it's going to know what you meant to say. It's going to start reading your mind as we say and come up with stuff.
All this stuff is wild, man. But in the meantime, though, I think there's a lot to enjoy right now. And I don't want to be like all doomsday about it. What I'm enjoying right now is I feel like the ability to storyboard, conceptualize, to create pieces that I can immediately use to illustrate a concept, to like you're doing, like creating a piece that you then use as part of your composite work or part of another piece of, artwork. That I think is amazing. It's amazing right now to be able to utilize these tools.
Yeah. Do you foresee yourself using it for your photography right now, or is it something that's totally different from what you do?
I am using it to kind of conceptualize ideas right now. I haven't actually taken one of those ideas to go and shoot it yet. So I'm still in new waters on that side. And I don't even know, like, there used to be that sense of gratification of conceptualizing something and going and making it into a photograph. And when I type into the computer and it spits it out and it's cool and I like it, the desire to go and like start from scratch and do it, like, it kind of gets diminished a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And someone actually said something interesting. They go, I spent all this time making this photograph and it still gets the same amount of real estate space on Instagram as you're scrolling as the digital art is. And so not only do we have this effect where the AI art can sometimes look more pleasing, but because there's so much more of it out there, our own work, when we take a photograph, gets a lot less real estate time as we're scrolling. So it's like we're getting hit from all angles.
For sure. So if you're a composite-based photographer, like composite artistry, I would be really scared. but if you're doing portraiture, like portrait work, I think you're good for a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have to see where it goes. But when I play with it, I still get excited about wanting to go back outside and shoot, because the thing that I love most about photography, and it clarified this for me quite a bit, was the interaction, the people element, getting out, being adventurous. That will never go away. There's always going to be that psychological need behind photography and the creation process with another individual, another human, that is very special and unique.
Well, I think I want to end on that positive note. that was a really nice note, and that's the direction that I for sure hope it goes. But hopefully, everyone, if you guys are watching or listening to this, you guys have appreciated the episode, and kind of, I'm very curious. I'm sure Pratik is as well. Yeah. What do you guys think that this is going to mean for virtually every creative endeavor, including photography? We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. In the meantime, though, be sure to follow my friend Pratik. Solstice Retouch is actually your photography Instagram handle, right? And then futurist.ai. We'll link everything up, but did I get those right?
You did, yeah.
Awesome. So be sure to check those out, and also check out Infinite Tools as well, which we'll link up to. And that's it for us. You guys know what to do here on Adorama TV. We would love it if you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. That helps me out, tells Adorama I'm doing a good job, so I can actually not lose my job, which is kind of the theme of this entire episode, right? So in the meantime, you guys can follow me at Pi Jirsa, and I'll see you all next week. Peace.